Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm so pleased that we finally asked Kim to uh, do a special visit to us here, the Finder's Course graduates. David and I had both uh, run into Kim's website and blog posts and other materials quite a while back. I think I probably discovered it, I don't know, 4 years ago, 3 years ago. And David and I sort of connected about it and said, hey, we ought to invite Kim to come sometime. So we're finally managing to do that. I found his website and his generous offering of materials and YouTubes to be very helpful, very instructive. And if you didn't see it on our Finder's Course Facebook page, there's a lovely description that I posted this morning about a woman who followed through with YouTube videos, online materials, the books that he offers, etc., and was able to progress from mindful meditation, insight meditation, began using open heart yoga all on her own, and progressed through the bhumis, or what some people know as the fetters, and the Buddhist Theravadan model, went all the way. So I encourage you to check out the materials, the interview, post by her on our Facebook page, and take a look at Kim's website and the many materials that are available. So Kim, thanks for being here this morning. Would you like to open with anything? What would you like to say?
Well, thanks for the opportunity. This is the first time I'm asked to do something like this. So like speak to a group of people who have been following some course like you have. So thanks for the opportunity. Nice to meet you all, although it's online. And, I guess I'm a bit old school in that sense that even though I regularly teach through internet, I do prefer meeting people in person because after all, we are all made of flesh and bones. I asked Fran to share some materials with you, and I hope you have read something and have some understanding of what we do in Open Heart Sangha. Maybe I could say something about the Sangha actually to begin with. I started Open Heart Sangha in 2008. So I've been teaching full time professionally since then, almost 11 years now. And Open Heart Sangha is a group of people who, well, by definition, follow open heart teachings or my teachings as their spiritual path, as their yogic path. And at the moment, it's about 85, 90 people. And most of us are spread around Europe. I'm Finnish myself, from Finland, by the way. So I have my oldest students are in Finland, but also there is a group of students in UK and Ireland. What happened a couple of years ago was that there was this Buddhist group there whose teacher passed away, Aloka David Smith's group, Dharma Mind group. He passed away, and so this group was looking for a new teacher, and they ended up asking me. So that's why we have like 30, 40 regular students and practitioners in UK and Ireland. And actually, most of our activities nowadays, since last year, 2018, has been centered in United Kingdom and Ireland. So most of our retreats, monthly retreats and events are there. But we do have people in different European countries, also in Russia, few practitioners in Australia, and then little by little also people take up open heart practice in US and Canada. So it's a small group still, but it looks like it's gradually the number is going up. So we have regular events, retreats, but also we have online events. So for example, next weekend we will have a weekend retreat through Zoom video session like we have now. And I also give empowerments, and other teachers, my students who are teachers, they also give tantric empowerments and teachings online. But hopefully, like I said, I'm a bit old school, I guess. Although sharing Dharma and teachings, practices, meditating together through the internet is wonderful, but I think that something is missing there. So that's why I prefer meeting people in person. So maybe I'll just give a brief outline what we practice and what we do in Open Heart Sangha. So personally myself, I have practiced both Hinduism and Buddhism in my career of practice. And but our practice method is based on Buddhist theory, namely the philosophy of emptiness, although I'm not really a philosophical person myself. So the philosophy of emptiness and compassion, and taking that as a foundation for everything that we do. And our practice is our system of training has three parts. So one is sutra, the so-called sutra, which means practices that do not involve mantras or gurus or deities. So sutric practices or sutric Buddhism is, for example, Zen Buddhism is sutric, Theravada Buddhism is sutric, and then there's the so-called Sutra Mahamudra in Tibetan Buddhism, which is obviously also sutric. So in this case, there is no empowerment involved, like there is in Tantra. So we have sutric teachings, then our main teaching is tantric yoga, which means that there are mantras, and mantras are received through empowerments given by a teacher. And so tantric practices, there are two main categories for it. And the first one is guru yoga, which means that the practitioner tunes in with a fully realized or fully liberated guru. And in this case, in the case of Open Heart, it is not myself. it is my guru, which is Guru Rinpoche. And so Guru Rinpoche, or Padmasambhava, he is one of the great figures of known through Tibetan Buddhism. So that's Guru Rinpoche is our main guru. So there is Guru Yoga and then Deity Yoga. Deity means meditating or generating our own mind and our own body as the body and mind of the deity. And deities in Buddhism, they can have certain qualities that are cultivated through different deities. For example, clarity of mind, or aliveness or compassion, compassionate part of our mind, or it can be wrathful, Buddha's wrathful deities, which means that if you have seen pictures of wrathful deities, they like look fierce, and they have, you know, fangs, and they have, sharp nails, and they look ferocious, fierce. So wrathful deities are practiced because our dualistic view, our ignorance, is very gross in the form of, harsh emotions like anger or strong greed or something like this. So that's why in Tantra there are wrathful as well as peaceful deities. So as I mentioned, first we have Sutra, then we have Tantra. In Open Heart, our main tantric practice is Open Heart Yoga. And then we have Chokchen or Ati Yoga, which literally, what it actually means is that we prioritize the recognition of our innate Buddha nature in our practice. If you have some familiarity with Tibetan Buddhism, and Chokchen is a Tibetan term which means great perfection. So in Chokchen paths, this recognition of basic awareness or knowing awareness, this basic state is taken as a starting point on a Chokchen path. So it is both the starting point as well as the goal to establish one's mind, one's internal state in this basic awareness or knowing awareness. In Tibetan, they have the term Rigpa, R-I-G-P-A, Rigpa, for this basic knowing awareness. So in Open Heart, we mainly we start also from that starting point of knowing awareness. As a teacher, I point out to it constantly for my students through verbal means as well as through direct experience. But then, because we have these inner obstructions, all the self-based patterns, habits happen. That's why we use tantric yoga to purify and to transform these so-called samskaras and kleshas back into the natural state. So even though we have also sutric teachings such as the two-part formula that I believe some of you have tried, I received some nice message just an hour before we started from one of you with a nice short message about two-part formula. And then we also have some other simple sutric practices, but mainly we practice Tantra and Chokchen, or Tantra and Ati Yoga. Maybe I can say something about the path itself. Fran mentioned bhumis. So bhumi literally means ground. I have also translated as a stage. So, but literally it means ground. So bhumis are grounds of attainment or stages of attainment. And in our practice method, we have the so-called open heart bhumi model that we use as our path map. So I have written a book about this. I have written 2 books, or I've actually written more books, but I haven't published but 2. So my first book is Awake, Handbook of Awakening. And my second book is What's Next on Post-Awakening Practice. So my second book in a detailed way explains and goes through what these bhumis in Open Heart Bhumi model, what they mean. So as far as I'm aware, and I've talked about this with a few of my friends who are senior teachers in Tibetan Vajrayana, as far as I'm aware, there is no tradition today, established tradition, that uses something like open heart Bhumi model, which is used as a really as a measuring stick to see at which stage any practitioner might be. So let's take, for example, the two-part formula and awakening as it is defined in open heart, which is actually quite universal to Buddhism in general. Probably the closest descriptions of Bhumi openings you can find from Zen Buddhism. They speak about kenshos and descriptions by Zen practitioners and teachers about kensho is the closest you get to Bhumi openings or Bhumis. So, for example, the two-part formula that I'm sure many of you have read about from the website and from the book, when that awakening, when that subject self that usually sits behind the eyes, looks out through the eyes, sees, hears through the ears, feels into the body that is downwards from the headspace. When that subject self, or me, or I, is seen through, it means that there is a Bhumi opening. So these Bhumi openings are openings into this natural state or Buddha nature that we all have. And these openings are irreversible. So when there is a Bhumi opening, they don't close. So this is very important to understand that, for example, through different meditation practices such as following of the breath or mantra meditation or chanting or even physical exercises, mindfulness, of course, we can reveal this basic state through shamatha principle. But if there is no insight, if there is no Bhumi opening, then the usual self, the sense of self, me, I, comes back. So in general, this is why Buddhism puts a lot of emphasis on the so-called analytical or vipassana meditation or vipassana principle, because if we only cultivate, do concentration practices or calmness practices, mindfulness practices, this usually doesn't lead to a shift, to an insight. So this is why Buddhism makes a big deal out of vipassana. And as I explained, sutra and tantra methods, both of them are actually have shamatha and vipassana principles. But in principle, both sutra and tantra methods have the same outcome. But in my experience, having done both of them, the effectiveness is quite different with sutra and tantra. In my experience, tantra is quite a bit faster than sutra, because in sutra you have to generate all the energy and all the mindfulness and concentration on your own. In tantric practice, it's the deities and the transmission from a fully enlightened guru, such as Guru Rinpoche, who, this tantric tantric elements make it much easier. So so I was talking about bhumi openings. So in open heart practice, we have 13 bhumis. Also there can be different number of bhumis depending which school of Tibetan Vajrayana you ask. But in our system, which by the way is not not part of any established Tibetan Buddhist school, we have 13 bhumis. 13. So a third of our Sangha at the moment, 27 or 28 people have had all these 13 openings. 13 major shifts, insights into this natural state. And when 11th of those shifts happen, then you don't need to seek this basic awareness or knowing awareness, Rigpa, anymore. Then it's there all the time. But you still have to integrate the rest of your confusions, selfing, habits, patterns, desires into that natural state. So first we open those bhumis, go through a series of openings, and with the 11th, this knowing awareness stabilizes, doesn't go anymore. But after that, there is the so-called perfection of bhumis, process of perfecting, which means that you purify the rest of your samskaras, obstructions, and habits.
Kim, could I ask you to clarify something?
Yes.
For the sake of the folks that have been through the Finder's Course, could you clarify basic awareness? When I hear that, what I think of is basically all five physical senses are operating, but there's nothing happening here. There's no narrative or comments or objections to what's going on. It's just awareness of everything as it's happening with no problem about it.
Yes. So in Dzogchen teachings, the term knowing awareness, Rigpa, has a very specific thing that it means, it points to. Would you like us to do, if I guide you a little practice, would you like to practice a little bit together? I see a few thumbs up, so we'll do it. So sit in a good posture. I'm sure you've been through all this before, but keeping spine upright in a very relaxed manner. Forget everything about meditation. Just forget it. Don't think of going into some special state of meditation. And simply just let your body relax. Feel your body, feel the different parts of the body. And again, forget about concentration techniques, forget about meditation. Just don't bother with the question of being in a meditative state or not. So for a few moments, you can allow tensions to release from the physical tissues, from the muscles, sort of like if we think of a cage where pigeons are held. Now you open the cage, open the door to the cage, and these pigeons, they fly out from the cage. In the same way, letting energies flow freely. And again, forget about a special meditative state. In Mahamudra and Dzogchen teachings, one of the terms that is used for meditation is non-meditation. It's used to distinguish that natural state, being one's Buddha nature, there is no effort of concentration. It is not a state like special states of concentration are states. Non-meditation, not meditating, but not being distracted either. So let your body soften a little bit more. If you feel like, you can take a few deep breaths to help with the relaxation. Relax your brow, relax your face, relax shoulders, relax jaw, very deeply relax the jaw. It is common in practice that the talkative mind keeps going on, and that is often a sign that tensions have accumulated in the jaws. So if you have a very busy mind, it helps to stretch the jaw, flex the jaws, release those tensions. Relax the chest. Deep inside the chest. Not only in the surface of the skin, but deep inside. Relax the solar plexus and relax the gut. And letting that relaxation spread into the hips, to thighs, knees, further down to ankles, feet and toes. Also feel relaxation in the shoulders. Upper arms, elbows, lower arms, wrists, hands and fingers. And again, forget about any special state of meditation. Whatever you associate the word of meditation, just keep it somewhere in your pocket or something. Don't bother about it. So, the question was about knowing awareness, or this knowing quality of our mind. So I will point it out to you. I see that most of you are having eyes closed. You can continue having them closed. Now, if I tell you to feel your body, feel your arms, the trunk, the midsection, and feel legs all at the same time, what happens is that your attention gets directed from behind your eyes down into the body. It's sort of like a beam of light or a flashlight is aimed downwards into the cavities of the body. So what happens here is that we aim or direct our attention into the body. But what if when your attention is aimed into the body, what if you look back into the source where the attention comes from, back into the head? Simply becoming aware of that source of attention. Forget about meditation. Forget about special states. We are doing very simple experimenting. And again, aim your attention, feel your body again. Arms, legs, the torso. So again, your attention is aimed downwards from the headspace, from behind the eyes. And there, again, return to the source of looking in the head. And simply remain aware without any effort whatsoever. Remain aware of this headspace, space behind the eyes, for a moment. So we are not doing any special practice or technique or something. Simply being aware without any effort. No pushing, no pulling, no pressure, no squeezing. So how this experience feels like. One might have like a sense of bliss, ecstatic bliss, but put that aside as well for now. If you feel blissful energy, keep that also in your pocket. So this knowing, awareness, or rikpa, it is easiest to find from the head, because that's the, how do you say, like a meeting ground of our main senses. Eyes, seeing, ears, hearing. And in the meeting point of eyes and ears inside the head is where this knowing awareness is easiest to find, easiest to recognize. So if from there you again aim your attention into the body, try to do it without losing that place in the head. What happens here is that we feel the body with the knowing as its base. Knowing of the feeling of the body. Knowingness of feeling of the body. And then, if we, scanning of the body, feeling of the body is one of the classic meditation, also Buddhist exercises. But how about if you, instead of feeling the body, if you feel the breath, movement of the breath in your belly, while being aware of it from the head. Feeling the movement of the breath in the belly, in the lower belly. So in this case, we would describe our present experience with the phrase knowing of the movement of the breath. Knowingness as the basis of following of breath. And again, this knowing quality does not at all require any effort. So, with these two exercises, feeling of the body and feeling of the breath, we have aimed our attention downwards. Let's do the same thing with seeing or eyes and hearing or ears. First with eyes. So you can return back into the headspace for a moment. And then open your eyes. You don't have to look at any object, anything specifically. Just have your eyes open. So eyes, they automatically, naturally see. If we have healthy eyes, they automatically see. That's pretty obvious, isn't it? So here we have knowing of seeing. Or you can say aware seeing. And then if you switch to ears, ears also they hear naturally. We don't need any effort in hearing. The sounds naturally, automatically come, and there is hearing of them. So here we have knowing of hearing. Not only hearing, but knowing that you're hearing, or knowing that you're feeling the body, or knowing that you're seeing. It's this very, very, I wouldn't even use the word intimate, but it's sort of like there's no distance at all. So knowing of hearing, it feels like the sounds are very close, or even without the sense of distance. Now you can leave seeing or hearing or feeling the body and simply remain in that knowing quality. Effortless knowing. If your attention momentarily goes to something that you see, something that you hear, something that you feel in the body, that's perfectly fine. But mostly just remain aware. If you prefer having eyes open, that's perfectly fine. If you prefer having eyes closed, that's fine too. So when this knowing is, it can be recognized from pre-awakening state, when the first bhumi hasn't yet opened. It can be recognized from any stage between pre-awakening to full enlightenment or Buddhahood. But until the 11th bhumi is open, 11th major insight has happened, then it will inevitably be a bit unclear. Even though, these glimpses into that basic awareness or shifts, they are very meaningful. But we only gain certainty about it with 11th major opening. As I mentioned that Dzogchen teachers, like myself, we use verbal means describing what this basic awareness is. But there is also something called pointing out through experience, where the teacher, like myself or other Dzogchen teachers, can remain in that state so that the people like yourself or students can see how it looks like. So if you like, you can open your eyes and simply feel me as I remain in that recognition. And then you can return to your own. And I will point out 3 basic characteristics that this natural state has. So the natural state has 3 basic qualities. And first of them is this knowing quality. But that's not all to it. If that was all to it, it would kind of be a bit lifeless. So when we remain in this basic condition, see in your own experience if there is aliveness to it. Aliveness. You can check if this basic state is alive or if it's dead. And if you come to the conclusion that it's alive, that you're alive, then see how it is alive. What's that second basic characteristic of aliveness like? Get a feel, get a taste of it. Now it starts to connect with the second characteristic. It starts to connect with the physical body more, and especially the heart area. Heart inside the chest. So it's aliveness, not unlike aliveness of a rainforest, abound with life, energy. And the third basic characteristic is groundedness, stability. See if this basic state has groundedness to it. Groundedness as in the example of mountain. Firmness, stability. It is also said in classical Dzogchen teachings that this third characteristic of groundedness has no ground, in the sense that it doesn't actually rest on something, and it's not something that rests. So that's why you hear or can read of groundless ground. So, knowingness, aliveness, groundedness. These three basic qualities are facets of one and the same thing, of our true being, of ourselves as Buddhas. So they are not three separate qualities. These three are together. But it might require quite a bit of practice and insight before we really see that these three are together, and what these three actually, how good the experience of it is. But since we all beings have Buddha nature, like Buddhism teaches, that's why anybody can glimpse it and understand and recognize that there is something to these teachings. You can feel your body a little bit. Again, if you feel like taking a few deep breaths, go ahead, relaxing the body, in knowing aliveness and groundedness. Okay. Then you can open your eyes, stretch your legs, move a little bit. If you like, we can take a 5-minute break. Okay. Just to say something before discussion. So this natural state, or Buddha nature, or basic state, as discussed in Vajrayana Buddhist teachings, Tantric Buddhist teachings, and Dzogchen teachings, it's really, really simple, very simple. And because all human beings have Buddha nature, the same ground of being, that is why it's possible to understand the concept of it, and it's possible to recognize it. But to take the exercise that we did, just resting in that recognition of knowing awareness that is alive and that is grounded at the same time, it's not so easy, because all this selfing is happening. In Buddhist terms, the selfing mind, self-based mind, is called samsaric mind, samsara, which means literally going around in cycles, in our head, in our emotions, in our thinking, in our way of perceiving the world, way of perceiving others and ourselves. So, because all this confused mind functioning is happening, and artificially coloring our experience, that's why in most cases of practitioners, and I actually haven't met anybody who would be exception to this rule, but it's traditionally said that in most cases there needs to be some prior purification or transformation of this vipassana practice on the self-based mind functioning before this natural state itself can be taken as a path and as a valid practice. So even though it can appear something very simple and something very, very straightforward, the tradition says that you have to be really careful, because our self-based mind, usually in teachings, thought habits and emotional habits, emotional states is discussed, and vipassana is practiced on thoughts and emotions, right? We are taught how to be aware of whatever thoughts come and go, and when these thoughts and emotional states, when they are happening, we are taught to be aware of them. And this is very effective, but this is not at all that there is to meditation or spiritual practice. And this is where this is a very, very important point, what I'm about to say about correct recognition of the natural state, that all great Dzogchen masters of the past centuries have underlined. And that is that there is the so-called substrate consciousness that we have. And the description of the so-called substrate consciousness means that there are these thin veils in our mind, sort of like a thin fog in the air in our mind, very, very thin. It can be like a thick gray, or it can be thinner gray, or very, very, very thin and subtle grayness. So as an experience, substrate consciousness, when we are veiled by substrate consciousness, it means that we can be dull, sleepy, or simply remain subconscious. I think you all have seen when somebody who does something like eating, for example, very habitually. They might be eating, but they have this blank stare. Have you seen that? That's when our mind is in substrate consciousness, in this basis or base of samsaric confused mind. So, as I said, substrate consciousness can be very obvious as dullness or sleepiness, drowsiness, or it can be very, very, very thin, so that it's very difficult to detect or observe it. And this is the point what Dzogchen masters of the past centuries have said, that it's very, very important to be able to distinguish between this clear awareness or Buddha nature and substrate consciousness, because those two are very different. The other one is our natural condition, and the other one is samsaric state. And this point is very important. I started practicing in Zen Buddhism back in the day, and have met many practitioners and teachers. And in my observation, unfortunately, I have to say that when most Buddhist meditators or most other style meditators, when they meditate, they remain in this substrate consciousness in thicker or thinner veils rather than in the recognition of Buddha nature. So this is actually I don't mean to lecture about this more, but this is very, very important, that very, very important to understand the difference of the two. But we can only understand it. My experience of teaching and practicing this from these teachings is that it doesn't come obvious very soon, even in the best of instruction and in the best of guidance. It doesn't become obvious that soon. But I just wanted to mention it, that this is something that needs to be taken into consideration. Is there something you would like to discuss? Feel free to say what you like, or ask or comment.
Kim, I have a small, probably technical question.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that what we did with the headspace, looking into the headspace, awareness, looking into itself, it's kind of exercise, but in my sense, knowing happening, not specifically
Sorry,
the
Alex.
center of the head, but you would say it's spread. Yeah.
Sorry,
you cannot hear?
No, it cut for several seconds.
Okay.
Can you start over, please?
Now, yeah?
Yes.
Good, cool. So, question is, it was a little bit confusing for me, this exercise with the headspace, awareness, looking back into itself, because in my sense, what you were telling about knowing, sense of knowing, happening simultaneously at every point in space, or beyond space, you can say, whatever. But it's not originating in the head, and it's not going from the head. So it's kind of spread out. It's everywhere, constantly, and knowing kind of happening, knowing itself at every point. Same with aliveness, basically. I can feel it more in the body space and in the heart. But aliveness, it's kind of reverberation and vibration and flowing energies in the space everywhere. And groundedness, it's, if I translate through my experience, it's kind of bottomless stillness behind the physical space, or stillness behind the object. It's everywhere and nowhere, as you said it, but it's kind of more into the sense of voidness or nothingness or stillness that's present or not present, you can say, at every point, or behind every point, or through every point. So for me, a little bit kind of confusing part was to associate origination of this knowing somewhere from the headspace, as in my experience, it's happening from every space simultaneously.
Right.
About it.
Yeah. So that's a good question. So we have three bodies. One is physical. One is energetic. Our mind, made of thoughts, emotions, and subtle energy, is energetic. And then there is this body of awareness that has this knowing, aliveness, and groundedness to it. So the first two, physical body and our mind, functions in three-dimensional space. If we observe our physical body, it clearly has three dimensions. It has height, width, and depth. Our physical body has these three dimensions. In the same way, when we have thoughts and emotions, they appear like objects in three-dimensional space. For example, when we meditate, there is some memory that comes up. And this, what comes up, can be observed as a three-dimensional object, right? So just like any other thought or emotion. So again, we have three-dimensionality. But then with this knowing, the game changes, because if we start looking at the edges of it, on the left, on the right, in the front, in the back, below and above, and in the center, we cannot find edges. So there is no three-dimensionality, which means that this basic state or knowing awareness is zero-dimensional. What happens with practice is that we bring this zero dimensionality. We don't actually bring it, but we realize that this zero dimensionality is actually in these mind objects that happen in our mind, that they actually have this beyond space, beyond time, zero-dimensional quality. This is what emptiness meditation or vipassana means, that we, to use the classic Buddhist phrase, see things as they are, without all this additional artificial self-flavoring. But your question is about so our physical body is the grossest, do you say grossest of our bodies? It is the gross, is that correct word? Yeah, so it's the grossest of our bodies. So that's why, it is a very good tool actually to use and to use for learning. It's just a good opportunity to have a body. But so yeah, it's just a like a teaching tool to point out that it's easiest to recognize in the head, because it is. It's most obvious there, because it's at the crossing point or meeting point of the senses here. So it's very obvious there. And the same thing with aliveness in the heart and groundedness in the belly, in the gut. But it's paradoxical, really, that not only that we can find this zero-dimensional Buddha nature in our mind objects, kind of dissolve our mind into this basic state. And if you have heard of, so this means that the duality between the two subtle bodies, body of awareness and the mind, the duality of those is removed. If you are familiar with the so-called rainbow body or light body phenomenon in Vajrayana Buddhism, this is taken even further, so that when first the sameness, zero-dimensional quality is realized in these two bodies, then the physical body is also brought into this realization. Did I answer your question?
Yes, in a sense. Yeah, it's good enough.
Did everyone hear that the last thing that Kim was saying, or was it just me that froze?
What did you didn't hear?
Just the last few sentences of what you said. It seemed to freeze for a little bit.
Okay, I was saying that when we think of these three bodies, physical, energetic, and body of awareness, first, in Buddhist practice, in Tantric Buddhist practice, we remove this duality, so that body of awareness and the mind or energy body are seen as one. This is the first stage of Buddhahood. In the terms of open heart teachings, it's the attainment of the 11th bhumi, when the first 10 bhumis are purified. And then, according to again Vajrayana teachings, then there is still duality between this body of mind awareness and the physical body. But as the legends indicate, such as the one of Guru Rinpoche and actually the rainbow body phenomena, or the so-called small rainbow body phenomena, has been happening also something like during the last 5-6 years. There has been 1 or 2 practitioners in Tibet who have attained the so-called small rainbow body, where the physical body and its energy, its elements, are also brought into this zero-dimensional experience. And an outer display of this stage is that, well, the physical body can completely disappear at the death. So the physical body dissolves into this light of awareness, or the physical body shrinks and becomes very small. So, and the body becoming small is called small rainbow body. It's not the full rainbow body, but the small rainbow body cases have been happening in Tibet. It still happens to this day. but full rainbow body, full light body, it's much, much more rare. So that's what I was saying. Feel free to ask anything.
I have a question.
Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Shri Sharma, were you saying something?
Sorry. What I was saying was when we're doing a practice, like a meditation or awareness, we are controlling the situation so that we are able to experience or get a glimpse of the true nature. And then we go about in a normal life and we are suddenly and sharply reminded of all the things we are trying to unlearn or, in these practices by just the experience of pain, hunger, people, just going around your daily life. So how do we integrate a learning like this in a controlled environment into becoming a habit or just a natural way of living without having to separate them? Practice time, I have this experience, and then go into real world and just become just the normal guy.
Right. Okay. So as I mentioned that, open heart, we have tantric practice as our practice method. But also, as I mentioned, if one can go directly into the recognition of the natural state and use that as a path, then you don't need any, or you don't need much of those tantric practices. But again, like I said, I haven't met anyone who would be able to do that. But basically, that's it. If we can just remain in the natural state, and in case we get distracted of it into functioning of the mind, we just come back to it. It doesn't matter whether we are sitting on the cushion or whether we are at work or doing groceries or whatever. So that's the most direct and simplest practice. Okay, but then as most people anyway, likely constantly get distracted or have internal emotional reactions and reactions on reactions. That's why tantrics, they chant mantras, whether it's the mantra of the guru, like Guru Rinpoche, or mantra of a deity. So tantrics usually use mantras in daily life. It's sort of like, for example, at work, whatever it might be, it's sort of like having a radio in the room. And at moments when you are required more focus in your work, the sounds of the radio kind of go into the background. But then when your attention is not needed so much, you can kind of get back to listening the radio or the mantra going around in your mind. So that's what it is. So something that is also the difference between mindfulness type practice and awareness type practice, these are two very different things. So mindfulness or concentration based paths, in such methods, you whether you are sitting or whether you are in activities, you cultivate one-pointed focus in whatever you are doing. One-pointedness, concentration on watching at the camera, concentration in taking the cup, concentration in lifting the cup, tasting the water, and so on. This is concentration style path. But there is another style, which is what I've been talking about, which is awareness type, where, like I was guiding you through the exercise of aiming the attention in the body. This is universally taught in meditation exercises. Feeling of the body, relaxing the body, following the breath in the belly, following the breath in the nose here, or something like this. But so when we simultaneously went to the source of looking, this gives a very different spin on that exercise. Because, by recognizing this knowing basis of knowing, it just becomes a completely different exercise. It's more, it's the principle rather than expression of the principle. So for in tantric practice and Dzogchen practice in daily life, we don't need to do that sustained concentration. It's very different. It's like you can just relax, say the mantras in this space, let the mantras of the deities clarify the space, let the deities reveal the basic space that has the 3 basic characteristics, and then just rest in that. So, like I said in the beginning, that in my experience, it's easier because it has less effort. You don't need to generate all this concentration and focus on your own.
I have a question. Oh,
Dylan, go ahead.
I have a question about the 2-part formula itself. So I read the book a couple times, and I've spent a few weeks at a time doing it. So when I do the I affirmation part, it feels like it really, really disturbs this area. And even if I spend, a whole hour, I do it for an hour, like back and forth for weeks, like it doesn't go away, it doesn't dissolve. It pretty much will stay disturbed for, pretty much the whole day. And I haven't really had much success in like not kind of seeing through that. Even when I go into the knowingness portion, it kind of feels like it's there out of the corner of your attention in a way. Like, so you can say, okay, there's no edges to the knowingness, and like you can't necessarily find the I back there, but still it's kind of there, And in my feeling of the awareness or the knowingness is that it's somehow like tethered or like kind of eclipsed a little bit by this area. And just in general, I find this area very affected by like a lot of meditations or meetups that I do, like, which is why I'm attracted to this technique and working with it. But yeah, I haven't had very much success in like kind of seeing through it, even if I can kind of intellectually or kind of go in and out of it, using the knowingness. It seems very solid in a way. At least in the sense that energetically it's like, it's pulsing.
Yeah. Okay. Two helpful pointers in that state when the pop hasn't yet happened. So one is that it's very important to clarify the first mode, the selfless mode, because if that's clouded or foggy, then it will become very difficult to use the first mode, selfless mode, as a backdrop, as a background for the affirmation and what the affirmation brings up. So it's actually in the there's this video recording from Dublin where I was teaching this, and a useful little technique for clarifying this selfless mode is to do what cats and dogs and all other animals do, which is that when they hear a sound that they cannot immediately recognize, they go all ears and eyes. they go like, what was that? So imitating this can be very useful. So suddenly just sharpening your vision and ears and even the touch, kind of tweaking the attention momentarily, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, half a minute, and then relaxing, completely relaxing, releasing that effort of attentiveness. This clarifies the first mode. You know, it just silences the mind and removes all that inner noise very effectively. So the first mode has to be clear. And then the second mode, you know, I've had this, I've done almost 150 guidances by now, and it's in almost all cases, people at some point, they get stuck, plateau a little bit. And this happens because when they say the affirmation, they start to say it mechanically. So they kind of get used to it. But the idea of the affirmation is to, you know, use it creatively, find new ways to bring this self sensation, the subject self up. You know, you can try saying it in a more gentle way, in a more energetic way, in a more stronger way, or using it in a very, very strong way. Sort of like silently shouting to yourself, me, 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 I, so that you really mean yourself. Just like when we have in a fight with your spouse or with your friend, when you get properly pissed off, you know, saying me or I in that way, as if you were angry or something like that. So, and then when the sensation, the subject self comes up, then completely releasing and just staying with it from that selfless mode. And going to the very, very heart of it, when this sense of self comes up, going to the very heart of it, just putting your attention inside it and just letting it be there. Looking inside to it. What's it like inside that bubble of self? How does it feel like there? What's inside there? And that's how the pop will happen. But creativity is certainly needed. You know, finding new ways to do it.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure. Good luck. Alex?
Kim, can you talk a little bit about dynamic concentration?
Yes. One of my favorite topics, shouting. So in open heart yoga, one of the unique aspects in that practice program, in our style of practice, is the so-called dynamic concentration, which means actually shouting loudly mantric syllables. And in the book What's Next on Post-Awakening Practice, I've talked about dynamic concentration and given the following example. So we were talking about, for example, the element of concentration in following of the breath. So usually when in different styles of meditation, when following of the breath or chanting of mantras or any other type of concentration practice, when it is taught with gentle concentration. So for example, if we are talking about following of the breath, we are told to just attend our movement of the breath in the belly or in the nose with gentle attention. Not strong attention, but gentle. Sort of like our hand resting and pressuring the other hand a little bit, but keeping it gentle. And in the book, I gave the example of, back in the old days when we had stereo systems at houses, there's the volume knob in stereos. And it's sort of like this gentle concentration is like having the volume very low, like at 5 or 10 or 20, at the lower end of the volume range. But so that's typically how concentration practice is taught. But as you know, I'm sure we all have had those moments of turning the stereos up. This can also be done with concentration practices. But if we started doing something like following of the breath with really heightened concentration, let's say 70%, 80% of the maximum, we would get tired very fast if we kept it up for a long period of time, because it requires energy to do that. But it's possible to do that. But in open heart practice, we use the volume knob like this. So momentarily turning it to 70, 80% and then bringing it down. So it's sort of like to use like a martial art analogy, it's sort of like punching a punching bag. So in open heart practice, we don't use that gentle, sustained concentration, but use this explosive style of concentration with the form of sound or voice, shouting syllables. So we are still talking about concentration practice, but the form of it is different. And because the form of it is different, because of this explosive quality, the outcome is very different. With gentle concentration practices, it is very, very unlikely that through concentration practices we end up having a recognition of the natural state. We can build up concentration and create this condition called samadhi, or zammai, how it's called in Zen Buddhism, for example, but that's different from natural state. That's just accumulated concentration. So when we use this explosive kind of concentration, or as I call it, dynamic concentration, it cuts through all stuff there is in the mind. So whether it is thoughts and emotions, or whether it is the substrate consciousness that I was talking about earlier, those thicker or thinner veils of grayness, dullness, drowsiness, when we shout, it creates a hole. And there is no other option when the hole is punched through than for the natural state to appear. So unfortunately, dynamic concentration or shouting practice it's not known in the world, unfortunately, because it's very, very effective. It can at first feel very weird and strange because we are not used to shouting, unless you are like doing singing exercises or opera singing or something like that. So in the beginning it can feel weird, but I haven't met anything so effective in my career of practice than that. Because in my experience, nothing cuts through the samsaric mind than shouting does. And actually, only two established traditions use shouting as a yogic method. And one of them is Chokchen, Tibetan Chokchen, where they shout, for example, pet syllable, like pet, pet, like 1, 2, 3 times to cut through the mind. And the other tradition that uses it is Japanese Shinto. In Shintoism, they shout syllables like we do in Open Heart, where you take the individual syllables of prayers or mantras and repeat shouting those syllables. It's like an idiot-proof way for recognizing the natural state. And this is actually the reason why, as I mentioned, that 30% of our Sangha members have opened all their bhumis. This is why. This is why they have these insights or kensho so quickly.
Hi, Kim. This is Duncan. Can you see me? Yeah. Hi.
Yes, yes.
I've been reading your stuff for the last week or two and trying to practice. And I've done, I mean, what you just demonstrated with the 3 qualities, that I'm very familiar with that. I feel like that's available to me from, I haven't been involved in Buddhism, but I've been involved in a lot of other streams. And I'm very aware of that continuous nature of presence and the 3 dimensions of it. And I feel a strong connection with Dzogchen all my life. But I still don't feel necessarily clear in the awakeness. Although all those qualities are available as soon as I remember to notice that, that's always there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm quite attracted because I feel like the precision of what you're teaching is great, and the help of people actually making the steps, being able to identify, and because I've been involved in a number of different paths for many years. But I also feel I'm very connected to, for example, Ramana Maharshi or Rumi or, other traditions, Christian, deeply inwardly connected to those masters and those Mahasiddhis, if you want to call them that. And I wonder whether being involved in your Sangha is exclusive or whether it can include someone who is, has a broad spiritual kind of devotional connection in a way. I mean, that's only one. I have a lot of other specific questions, but I wanted to ask that because it's... Because I know that you said that your teacher in Hawaii, she had, I've been involved in Advaita and visited Ramana's place and, felt a strong transmission from Ramana and stuff. She had other masters apart from your tradition,
Yes, yes. Yeah, it's not a problem at all to read books, go to events, attend teachings in other styles. Not at all. That's actually what I recommend for my students to not only to attend other Buddhist events, but also other style of events. Somebody who I constantly recommend seeing is the Hugging Saint, Amma, from India, who I think very highly of. I've met her many, many times over 15, 16 years. So I do recommend people to get educated about the different yogic and dharmic paths in general and different teachings. Having said that, there is one particular thing that should be understood, which is that it is not wise or effective to combine tantric teachings, meaning mantra practices from more than one source. And the reason for that is because when we say tantric practices, meaning mantras received from some teacher or teachers from one lineage. When we cultivate those mantras, let's say, for example, money mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum.
Yeah.
In Open Heart, we actually have like a bit different version of money mantra, Abba Hu Mani Padme Hum Hri, which has just more syllables in it, relating to certain inner aspects of our awareness. But when we say mantras of one lineage, it puts our subtle nervous system to a certain frequency rate. It starts to vibrate in a certain way, in a harmonious way. But even if we received money mantra of the Buddha of compassion from another lineage and started saying that too, of the very same deity, there would be just a tiny bit of difference in the vibration, in the frequency, even though it's the same deity. And this creates this makes the subtle nervous system, it gets confused because it cannot sustain two different frequencies. It cannot sustain two different lineages. So this is something that needs to be understood, that I've actually experienced it myself, confusing my energy body by doing tantric practices from different sources. But in general, in tantric teachings, it's said that, you can, if you want, you can combine tantric practices, but you shouldn't, because the body cannot take it. Having said that, if you practice, for example, if you practiced open heart yoga and did tantric practices in our system, you could join or do any type of sutra practice without any problems. For example, Theravada practice or self-inquiry of Ramana Maharishi or Zen practice. No problem at all, because there's no element of transmission there.
I see. So you can't have received transmission from different traditions.
No, not tantric transmission, but there are other kinds of transmissions. But I'm talking about tantric transmissions specifically.
Yeah, but I see that you have. I mean, what encouraged me was that you have a mantra from Isa, or you have an invocation of.
I see.
And other, because I was initiated into a long time ago with Padmasambhava, where I had my first experience of popping into space, the Nyingma lineage. But and I call on that regularly, but I also call on others. So yeah, it's just And I've never felt a Buddhist, so because it's always, for me, it's a sort of heart-centered path. I love it. A love path for me. So.
Right. In general, Buddhism is it's quite dry. In our style of practice, we do. I have a background in Hindu Tantra as well. My teacher from Hawaii, Sivakami, she was a bhakta mostly. She had a really strong, loving flavor, and I used to, practice in that same way. But so usually Buddhism can be too dry, in my opinion. But in our style of practice, we also do a lot of singing, like musical singing. It's called kirtan.
Sure.
So we do kirtans on retreats.
Okay.
Musical.
Is it possible? I know I have too many things to address in this. Is it possible to write to you or something?
Yes, it is possible.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Kim, that might be a good question to you at this point. How can people contact you and stay connected with you?
Well, I have email. You can find it from the, I can write it to the text window. now if you want to write to me soon. So I'm available through email. If you think that you wanted to do guidance to awakening, I'm happy to help you. You can find the information from the website. If you think you're already through with awakening, we can discuss that also. I'm happy to do a Bhumi analysis to you to verify it. If you are interested in open heart yoga, we have online empowerments. The next one is due actually next weekend. It will be given by one of my students, Lama Karl. He's a Norwegian fellow. So there is that happening next week, and usually we have one open heart yoga empowerment about monthly. So we will have those in the future as well. In Facebook, we have the public group called openheart.fi, that everyone is welcome to join. And then we also have those who feel that open heart practice is, clicks for them, is suitable for them. We have Open Heart Sangha, which is a secret or closed group in Facebook. And that group can only be joined if one has learned open heart yoga and practiced it for 1 month. Then after 1 month, you can ask to join Open Heart Sangha. I think that's I answered. Would you like to sit a couple of minutes before wrapping it up?
One other question from Sebastian. Normally, when we have a guest, one of our members offers their Zoom room. We record it, and then at a later date, put it on the Finder's Course website. And Sebastian had the question of whether this video would be shared at some later time.
This video? So I actually didn't come to even mention it, but I've been recording it since the beginning. Would you like it to be published? Let's have a vote. Thumbs up or mostly thumbs, I think. So the video doesn't have anybody's names. It doesn't show the names.
I would like to say I wouldn't mind it being published on the Finders, but I wouldn't want it on YouTube as a general thing. Not unless you cut out my contribution. Just because of my work and various things.
Okay.
It could be an unlisted video, so nobody can find it unless they have the exact link. So it should be available to Finders people.
Fran, was your question answered?
So yes, you will make it available to, for example, myself, so that I could post it on the Finder's website?
Sure.
Great, thank you. And David also reminds me to mention that donations to Kim were suggested in the announcement for the Zoom meeting. And again, you can send a donation to Kim's Hotmail address for a PayPal donation. If you're unable to do it, if you don't have a PayPal account or whatever, you could contact Kim directly for another method to make a donation.
Yeah, thank you for your support. I've already received several donations, so thank you very much of those and those who are coming. So should we sit now for 2 minutes? On behalf of us all, I will chant the short bodhicitta or prayer of compassion, as well as the dedication of merit. May all beings be free. May all beings be free. May all beings be free. May all beings receive my accumulated merit. I dedicate the merit to the refuge and to all sentient beings. You can join your hands. All right. It's late evening or night here. For you, it's quite early morning there. So I wish you have a good day in US or wherever you may be. And hopefully talk to you later. All the best. Thank you for this session and all the best to everyone. Yeah.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, everyone.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye.